Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today we're going to be building the worst $700 gaming PC in 2024. Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today we're going to be building the best $700 gaming PC in 2024. I really like this PC because if you want to game at 1440p while not breaking the bank and getting a high frame rate, and say you want to stream your gameplay to Twitch, YouTube, Kick, or wherever, you can absolutely do this with this $700 gaming PC. It is very much a bargain value PC build, and I'm going to show you how to build it step by step, the parts going inside of it, how to install Windows, graphics card drivers, its 1440p gaming benchmarks, and then my final thoughts on this build. And I will say, if you like to build this PC yourself, I've got a super handy PCbuilds.gg link in the description below showing you all the parts you need to put together this PC. All of them are going to be compatible. If some of them aren't the exact same parts that I use in this build, then that's fine. They're still going to be compatible, but that's a really useful way to find the cheapest parts to make a build like this possible. So again, feel free to check out the PCbuilds.gg link and let's get started. All right, so to build this PC, all you're gonna need is a banana, a pair of scissors, and an 8GB or bigger USB flash drive for your Windows 11 bootable media device. When it comes time to actually install Windows on this PC, you'll plug this in, turn on your PC, and install Windows. But I have a full tutorial on how to create one of these linked in the description below, but we'll wait until we get to that later in the video. But for now, for the processor, I'm going with the Ryzen 5 5600. This is probably AMD's best budget gaming CPU for the AM4 socket. It is last generation, but the price is really good for this price segment. It is about $110 on Amazon, but what makes this CPU even better is if you buy it brand new from AliExpress, which yes, you can actually buy this exact CPU for about $70 to $80 brand new off of AliExpress. And if you want a verified seller, again, check out the PCbuilds.gg link in the description below. There I'll have verified sellers for the Ryzen 5 5600 linked to my website, so you can get this CPU for almost $40 off, which is a really good deal. But 6 cores, 12 threads, and there's a decent upgrade path, although this is last generation, because there are some X3D CPUs for this socket that are really useful to upgrade to for even more performance. So there is some CPU upgrade flexibility with this. Anyways, we're given a stock cooler. Do note, this comes with thermal paste. However, if you buy your Ryzen 5 5600 from AliExpress, like what I have linked in my PCbuilds.gg link, you will need your own kind of cooler. And you can use anything you want in this PC. It can be an air cooler, heck, it can even be a water cooler. It can be whatever you want, but I have my favorite budget CPU cooler linked again in the PCbuilds.gg link. And to pair up with this CPU, I've chosen the MSI B550M Pro VHD Wi-Fi. Really, you don't need this exact motherboard. It can be from Gigabyte, it can be from Asus, it can be from ASRock. Just the reason why I'm going with this one from MSI is because it has Wi-Fi built into the motherboard and it's black, which fits the theme of this build. Again though, whatever I've linked in that PCbuilds.gg link is going to be compatible with this build. Here's our IO shield, we will need that. Here's our Wi-Fi antennas, we will need that. Now let's go ahead and install our 5600 onto the motherboard. All right, so go ahead and take out your Ryzen 5 5600. There should be a triangle located on the bottom left of the CPU, and you're gonna wanna line it up with the triangle on the top left of the socket. If you line these two up, the Ryzen name should be parallel with this black plastic piece here on the CPU socket, but we gotta open up this lever first. Open that up, drop in the 5600, give it a little jiggle. That is in there. Press this down, really easy. And while we're here, let's go ahead and take our screwdriver and unscrew these two black plastic brackets. Now, once again, if you order your Ryzen 5 5600 from AliExpress, like what I have in my PCbuilds.gg link, this won't come with a stock CPU cooler like this, unless say you order this from like Amazon or Newegg. But if you do need something aftermarket, this is where I'd go ahead and install that right now onto the Ryzen 5 5600. Use whatever you want, or you can use what I have linked in my PCbuilds.gg link, whether it be air or water cooler. It will work with this PC build and even this motherboard. Because check this out, we even have a pump fan header on this motherboard, so this can support water cooling. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'll go ahead and install the stock cooler, which yes, this does include thermal paste. So you're gonna want the side with the logo on the left side away from the RAM. You're gonna line up this with the 4 holes on the back side plate. And then just one at a time, go ahead and press down the CPU cooler. Press down the 4 legs into one side of the back plate and then onto the other side. You want to get these 4 screws initially into the threads, but they don't have to be completely screwed in all the way. Just make sure there's contact. And once it looks like all 4 screws are going to go in, then you can go ahead and fully tighten one side, go to the other side, and just rinse and repeat. All right, that's fully in. And don't forget to plug in your CPU fan cable into where it says CPU fan. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so for our memory, we are using 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory from Clev. The brand doesn't matter. This can be from Silicon Power, it can be from Team Group, it can be from Corsair, it can be from G-Skill, it can be from whatever RAM manufacturer you want, or whatever is linked in my PCBuilds.gg link, but the speed does matter. This is running at a speed of 3200 megahertz with a Castlane CF16. That is perfectly fine for this system. It's a really good value RAM kit. But once again, whatever I've linked in my PCBuilds.gg link will be compatible with this build. 16 gigs is still plenty for gaming nowadays, and we're pairing it up with a 1TB Crucial T500 Pro. Now, what I've linked in my PCBuilds.gg link may be different than this one because the SSD could be cheaper, but trust me, it'll work just the same as long as it's a 1TB M.2 PCI Gen 4.0 SSD. It will work in this system. The only thing you want to make sure you look out for is that the SSD has a DRAM controller, which, don't get me wrong, a lot of cheap RAM kits don't have a DRAM controller, but this one does, as does the one that I have again linked in the PCBuilds.gg link. Now let's go ahead and install these onto the system. Okay, so to insert our RAM into the motherboard, first and foremost, note that the 2 inserts here on the RAM are different sizes, which means this can only go in one way. But whereas to actually put the RAM sticks, these will always go into slots A2 and B2 on the motherboard. If you're ever inserting 2 sticks of RAM into a PC, they will always be in these 2 slots that are farthest from the CPU, separated by 1. If you don't believe me, you can just check the motherboard manual and figure that out yourself, or just follow what I say. There we go. That's gonna go in. Let me give it a firm press. And guys, I'm telling you, you have to be firm with these. They have to go in all the way. Use some force if necessary, like this. There we go. Now for our SSD, we're gonna take our screwdriver and we're gonna go ahead and put in a smaller Phillips head 1 bit on here because these screws are a little bit smaller. We're gonna unscrew the topmost M.2 slot right here. This is our heatsink for our M.2 SSD so it doesn't get too hot. And again, how we do this is that we remove this this plastic piece right here. That way our SSD can attach to this. Take our SSD. You can see there's this tiny little notch here on the actual M.2 SSD. So this is gonna go in a certain way. You'll put this into the M.2 slot, give it a press. It should just click right in. And then let's take our heatsink right here, put it back on, lay it flat. And now let's go ahead and screw this back into place. Man, that was easy. Okay, now for the case, I'm using the Thermaltake Divider 170TG ARGB. Now, why am I using this case? I'll be real with you, it really doesn't matter what micro ATX case you go with for this build as long as it's micro ATX. Heck, even what I have linked in my PCBuilds.gg link could be different from this just to make sure that this PC costs $700. But that said, right now this case is on a discount. It's $66, which is why I got it. And it also comes with 2 front pre-included 120mm ARGB fans. And again, the most important thing is you want to make sure that you have a micro ATX case that'll fit your micro ATX motherboard. That's all it is. Would like to put out some good things about this case. I do like the way it looks. You have quite a bit of room up top here if you want to throw in a water cooler in the future. And I think this is decently long enough to support longer graphics cards in the future. Also, the PSU cover is ventilated, so that's some nice airflow. You could probably put some more fans. And yeah, it's just a neat and tidy little case for 66 bucks. Anyways, here's our instruction manual. If you don't know where to put what in this PC case, or any PC case for that matter, I mean, as long as you have the reading comprehension of a 4th or 5th grader, you can build a PC. All right, but let's take off this back panel here and see what we have. Okay, we have a hard drive bay down here, and if we open this up, here is a white box full of all the screws and accessories we'll need to put whatever we want into this PC. You will not need to buy any separate set of screws or anything like that. You won't have to do that. And in this plastic bag right here, we are given 2 additional PCI slot covers, the ones that we take off here for our graphics card. That's pretty neat. Some extra zip ties for cleaner cable management. Oh, and this is neat. We're given a BIOS speaker for our motherboard. In case if anything goes wrong, it'll give us a beep signal telling us what is wrong with the system. And then all the screws we'll need to build whatever we want. Put whatever we want into this PC case. Now let's go ahead and put the motherboard into the PC case. But first, don't forget, don't make this mistake. Put in your IO shield before you insert the motherboard. This is pretty straightforward. So as you can see right here, you have one side with pokey bits sticking out for the IO shield and one side that is completely flat. The completely flat side is the side we want sticking on the outside of the PC case like this. And we want the side with all the sticky bits to be on the inside touching the motherboard. Now, as far as how to orient this, just imagine you have the motherboard inserted into the PC case. We're gonna wanna line up the IO shield with how this is gonna be. So it's gonna be like that. Let's bring this around, push it through, push on the 4 corners so they all snap into place. Make sure it's all the way in there, and there we go. Let's put in the motherboard. So before we throw in the motherboard into the PC case, let's make sure that we have standoffs required for this motherboard, which it looks like we have all of these ready. Go ahead and double check. If we were to put this down, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 holes to cover for the motherboard. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pre-included standoffs. That is good. We are all covered. Let's go ahead and drop this in, and using the screws that you see here on screen, or as designated by the case manual, we'll go ahead and screw these into the standoffs one by one, but don't completely screw these in. You're gonna wanna leave them 3/4 of the way screwed in. First, we wanna populate all the standoffs with screws for the motherboard 3/4 of the way in, and then once they're all the way in, then we'll go ahead and tighten all of the remaining screws. That way we put equal pressure on all sides of the motherboard. All right, we've got screws now, 3/4 of the way in for all of the standoffs. So now let's go ahead and go to one screw, completely tighten this one all the way into the standoff. Go to a corner of the motherboard adjacent from it, tighten this one up, do a little crisscross formation here, and fully tighten all the remaining screws. And with that done, let's go ahead and put in the power supply. Okay. For the power supply, we are going with this MSI Mag A650BN. Now, I'll be real with you. Whatever I have linked in the PCBuilds.gg link will work with this build. It may not be this exact MSI model, but at the very least, it'll be 80+ bronze and have somewhat of a good ranking according to the PSU tier list from psucultist.com or .net. I forgot which extension they use. But this one here from MSI is pretty good. I like the Mag series because they're a good blend between affordability, value, and overall specifications. But really what's gonna matter most is making sure you have enough wattage for your PC. So 650 watts is plenty for this PC. For our Radeon graphics card and Ryzen 5600, that's gonna be plenty. But if you at all wanted to, say, put in a future graphics card that take more power, maybe you want 750 watts, again, you've got that flexibility as far as what power supply you ultimately want to choose. Anyways, here's our power cable for our power supply. We'll need that when we eventually turn on the computer for the first time, but note, we've got these screws right here. This is what we'll use to screw in the power supply into the back of the PC, which let's do now. So here's our power supply. Again, it's fine if this is on the 0. It'll need to be a 1 when we finally turn on this PC. But for now, let's keep it at the 0. Fan side, facing down, bring this in, line it up with the PSU bracket right here. Take your 4 screws, put them in. Okay, and let's get this final screw. And well, bam, we've got the power supply in. Now let's go ahead and start plugging in our front IO, our power cables, and our neat little RGB and fan controller into the motherboard. So first, let's go ahead and take care of this RGB and fan controller, which fortunately, we only have just a singular RGB connector going out from this, but we do have to power this up with a SATA power connector, which we can take care of through the power supply. And I think right here, yep, this is our singular fan header that is going to control our 2 front fans, we'll also have to plug this into the motherboard. So let's go ahead, put these 2 things into the motherboard first. Okay, here is our fan header from our fan and RGB controller. We'll put it into one of these fan sys headers right here. It really doesn't matter which one. It's not like your PC is gonna explode if you put it into the wrong one. And then here is our RGB connector from that RGB and fan controller, which we do have this handy little J Rainbow 1 connector. The reason why we're using this one is because as you can see, there are 3 pins right here, and on the connection here, there are 3 inserts. So the 3 and 3 will go together. There we go. Okay, now before we continue with putting the rest of these front IO cables into the motherboard, one thing I do want to note is that right here, we have our reset switch hooked up to the fan and RGB controller. What this means is when we go here to the top of the PC case and we press the reset button right here, that means it'll actually change the RGB on the controller as you press that reset button. So we do not need to plug in the reset switch into our motherboard. And I also want to point out, at least for this RGB and fan controller, we are given an additional fan header and an additional RGB header for that additional fan. So if you wanted to plug in a 3rd fan, say right here into the back of the PC case that has RGB, you can plug that into this controller pretty easily. It doesn't use any proprietary connector. But other than that, let's go ahead and plug in all of our front IO cables here, which are on the top of the PC case. Let's start off on the right side of the motherboard here with our USB 3.0 connector, this blue chunky boy here. There's a little notch here on the connector, and it's gonna line up with this insert here on the connection. This is only gonna go in one way. You are not gonna mess this up. There we go. And then moving down here, we have all of our power button, power LED pins right here. The most important one is our power switch, AKA our power button. Now, one thing that's cool about this motherboard is that in fine print, it actually has all the different connections where you want to plug those on the motherboard itself. Otherwise, I will say, check out the motherboard manual. There it'll show you where to plug in each of these individual connections, whether it's MSI, ASRock, Gigabyte, or whoever, it'll show you clearly how to plug these in. So I'll go ahead and plug these in one by one. Just take your time. It's really not that hard. Just exhibit patience and plug these in one at a time. There you go, we've got our power LED just above our HDD LED, and right next to our power LED, we put the most important switch of all, our power switch. And remember, our reset switch, which would go below the power switch, is currently being used to change the RGB for our fan and RGB controller. Now right here is a standard USB type 2.0 header. This is gonna go where it says USB, obviously. Can't miss that, and it doesn't matter which one you plug it into. We'll do this one back here. And then finally, we have our HD audio connector. Obviously it says HD audio. This will go into the bottom left of your motherboard. Always, the location for this never changes. And that is our front IO done. Okay, again, here's our fan and RGB controller, and in order to power everything we need for this to work, we need to plug in a SATA power connector into this SATA power cable right here, which we can find from our power supply. As you can see, we've got these flat connectors right here. The 2 and 2 will go in together. It does not matter which one you plug in, just make sure it's got power. And now with that, let's go ahead and plug in our motherboard, CPU, and PCIe power connectors into our CPU, motherboard, and graphics card. Okay, let's start with our motherboard power connector, this big chunky connector here. There's this latch here on the connector, and it's gonna line up with this notch here on the actual connection. So line the 2 up. This will only go in one way. Firmly press in, make sure it is inserted all the way. And then here on the top left is our CPU power connector where it says CPU, same kind of deal. Here's a latch on the connector, and then here's an actual little notch here on the connection itself. Line the 2 up. This will only go in one way. You will not mess this up, but make sure to press it in all the way, like that. And then finally, here are our PCIe power connectors for our graphics card, which we'll go ahead and plug in now. Okay, for the graphics card, I have 2 options for this build guide. Both are $300 US. Both will work the exact same in this build, and honestly just comes down to a matter of availability. So the graphics card I would recommend for this type of PC would be the Radeon RX 6750 XT, since although it is a last generation graphics card, it still has plenty of horsepower for the dollar for 300 bucks. But I understand that 6750 XT stock and availability worldwide is not that great because it is an older graphics card. It'll soon be phasing out of production. And when that happens, I do want to let you know that you also have the Radeon RX 7600 XT that you can use for this build, which actually has 16 gigabytes of VRAM. But it's not true 16 gigabytes of VRAM, but that's a conversation for later. But this is also $300, also performs pretty well, especially for 1440p. And this is the one we're actually gonna use in our build guide, since I suspect this one is going to be more available worldwide. But also visually, this Hellhound edition card is gonna look better in this system than this bigger Red Devil edition card. That aside, like I said, both graphics cards will be perfectly compatible in this build guide. It can be from PowerColor, Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, Sapphire, XFX, it doesn't matter. As long as it's one of those two cards, it'll work in this system. And for the 7600 XT specifically, it is a budget 1440p gaming graphics card, because remember, this does have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. So if you wanted to pack on any games that'll utilize high memory textures at higher resolutions, this card can do it. Anyways, make sure you take off this little piece here from your graphics card, this PCI cover, before putting this in. But to actually insert it, we're gonna wanna unscrew this little panel here from the PC case, move this out of the way, and then we're gonna go ahead and rip off the slots where our graphics card is gonna occupy, which will be these top two most PCI slots. There we go. And now if we look to our baggie full of screws that came with this PC case, we're actually gonna wanna use the same case screws that we used for installing the power supply earlier into this PC case, these thicker black screws right here. You'll only need 2 of them, and we'll take our graphics card, bring it in. Oh, remove this guy right here. Well, bam. All right, now bring this in, line up the PCI slot with the graphics card. This is probably gonna go in, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a firm press, and I wanna hear it click, like that. The graphics card is fully inserted. Now let's go ahead and screw it into the PC case. Let's move this latch back into place, and now let's screw this in. Okay, and final thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and take our PCI power cables and plug these into the graphics card. Make sure that's fully inserted, clicked in all the way. This is just gonna use a 6-pin connector here on the other side, so we don't need this additional 2-pin right here. Line up the latch with the notch, press it in all the way, and there you have it. But there's one final thing we gotta do. Remember our Wi-Fi antennas from our motherboard box? Let's go ahead and put those into the back side of the motherboard here. All right, and with these, we are completely finished building this PC. Congrats. Now let's go ahead and plug this into a wall outlet and see if it turns on. All right, let's go ahead and turn on this PC for the first time. So let's go ahead and do our pre-boot checklist. Now, first and foremost, this power cable that you got with the power supply, plug this into the back of the power supply and plug in the other end into a wall outlet, and then flick the switch from the 0 to the 1. And that'll prime the PC. So when you turn on the power button, or when you press it, it'll actually turn on. Next, and this seems pretty obvious, but of course, plug in a keyboard and a mouse into your PC. Okay, and then here is the part that, like, every first-time PC builder somehow messes up, but you aren't going to. All right, so this is your display cable. It can be DisplayPort, it can be HDMI, it does not matter. For this tutorial, I'm using DisplayPort, and I'm plugging one end into the graphics card down here. Look where the cable is. It's down here, right? That's from the graphics card. Don't plug it into the motherboard. The motherboard doesn't have any graphics. Your graphics card does. So plug this one end into the graphics card and the other end to your monitor. And then when people seem to get that right and nothing still works, they forget to plug in the power for their monitor. So don't forget to do that either. All right, and with all of that plugged in, the final thing you're gonna wanna have is that Windows 11 bootable media device on any 8 GB or bigger USB flash drive. I have a full video tutorial linked in the description below showing you how to create one of these for free. You're gonna wanna plug this into any USB 3.0 port. And now with that, I'm gonna go ahead, make sure, yep, we're on the 1, press the power button, and we wait. You're just gonna wanna be patient. Let the PC do its thing. It could take a few minutes, but eventually something should show up on your monitor. Okay, if we get something like this, press F1 to set up or to proceed. There's the name of our motherboard brand. There we go. There's our little spinny circle thing for Windows. And now, let's go ahead and install Windows 11. All right, so go ahead and hit next, install now. Here is where you can enter in your Windows product key if you have one. I don't, so I'm gonna go ahead and click I don't have a product key. That's fine, you can activate it later. You can choose Windows 11 Home or Pro. I'm gonna choose Home, because why not? I accept, next, custom. There's our 1 terabyte. Oh, it's only 500? Interesting. Okay, well there should be our 1 terabyte drive. Let this run, and then we'll set up Windows. All right, go ahead and choose your country, choose your keyboard, add a second keyboard if you want. Here is when you go ahead and connect to your Wi-Fi. Now, although this motherboard has Wi-Fi built in, the drivers aren't installed for it. So we will have to connect to the internet in some way. That could either be through connecting an Ethernet cable straight from the back of the PC to your router, or what I have here, I have a spare USB Wi-Fi adapter, which I'm gonna go ahead and put in the back of the PC and connect to the internet that way. There we go, there is our Wi-Fi. Hit next. Now let's go ahead and name our PC, which I'm gonna go ahead and skip. Now here is where we're gonna go ahead and sign into our Microsoft account. And this is what you'll use for pretty much signing into your PC every time. This is what will be associated with your PC. So if you have a Hotmail account from your Xbox days, or if you don't have one, now's the time to create one. This is what you'll use to say, sign into the Microsoft Store if you wanna download anything from there or download any new Microsoft apps. If you're given this, go ahead and hit more options, set up as a new PC, set up as a new PC, create a PIN. This is what you'll use to sign into the PC every time you turn it on. Now for all of these privacy settings and future things that they'll advertise to you and ask for you to accept or not, I just turn them all down, or I say no, because they're extra processes running in the background or extra services and features that I don't need for this PC. I keep everything vanilla. Now let's go ahead and install graphics card drivers. All right, once you get to the Windows home screen, here you'll find this useful little driver utility installer. You'll see something like this from MSI, Asus, Gigabyte, ASRock, doesn't matter. This is the one for MSI. We can go ahead and select what things we want to install for this PC driver-wise, excluding the graphics card. So Dropbox, we don't need that. MSI Center, yeah, that's for RGB purposes, but all these chipset drivers, network drivers, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, we obviously need those. But what we don't need is Norton, we don't need CPU-Z, we don't need AIDA64, and we don't need wallpaper. So we'll just install what is necessary, hit install, and while that's going on, let's go ahead and download the graphics card drivers for our Radeon graphics card. So just type in AMD drivers into Google or Bing or whatever. It's really straightforward. Here we can go ahead and download some auto detect drivers, but since we already know what graphics card we're using, we'll just go ahead and select graphics, RX 7000, 7600 XT, submit, Windows 11, download, done. We'll go ahead and open up that. Now, I don't know why people seem to make a big deal about this, but installing graphics card drivers could literally not be any easier than what they are. So yeah, we're getting this installed, we're letting our chipset drivers install, and once this all finishes, we'll go ahead and restart the PC, enter the BIOS, and do one more important thing. Okay, our graphics card drivers and our chipset drivers have finished installing. I'm gonna go ahead and finish, and then we will restart. And in order to enter the BIOS, we're gonna go ahead and spam the delete key once the brand name of the motherboard pops up. Okay, there we go, we made it in. And the only thing we're literally gonna do is go ahead and click AXMP Profile 1. We're gonna hit Advanced, Settings, Save and Exit, Save Changes and Reboot, hit yes, and then we'll get to gaming. Okay, now let me show you something real cool before we get to the benchmarks. Now, one thing you can do really easily if you have an AMD CPU and GPU in a system is that you can overclock the CPU and GPU straight from the Radeon software without having to do it through the BIOS. Or in terms of the GPU, if you're one of those people who wants to save on your power consumption and save on your power bill, you can actually undervolt the GPU straight from the software. And I mean, takes a few clicks, boom, done. There you go. But yeah, this is just a free way to get even more FPS out of your PC if you'd like, just to get the most out of it. And again, if you care about power savings, you can undervolt it. If you want more FPS, you can overclock. Heck, you can even overclock the VRAM, but there's plenty you can do through here. I'm gonna run this with overclocked GPU and overclocked CPU. And now let me go ahead and show you guys the gaming performance. All right, check this out. We are gonna start things off with CS2. Oh, you know, I respect this guy. He was going at me with a pistol and I wanted to return the favor. Anyways, we're playing CS2 at 1440p. Let me show you the graphics settings. Check this out. Medium settings, and we have AMD Anti-Lag 2.0 turned on. Pretty neat for those of you who play CS2. And oh yeah, there's the frame rate on the top left. Woo! If you have a 240 hertz 1440p monitor, congrats. I mean, that's kind of overkill, you know? But a skill issue. I think that monitor is kind of overkill for this kind of build, but once again, like, you'll get plenty of FPS in this build, guys. And remember, this is using the 7600 XT. We'd actually be able to go even faster if we had a 6750 XT instead of the 7600 XT. Anyways, I'm sucking right now. Oh, he DC'd. Hey man, dude, I got no complaints about the FPS. People who, I mean, is 240, over 200 at 1440p enough. And this is at medium, you know? People who play CS2, they don't play for the graphics, they play for the frame rate. This is good. Not that shooting though. All right, now before we get to our final esports game, I think we should play a AAA game. And for that, I've chosen Starfield. Because this game, believe it or not, still after a year, is quite taxing. And probably the biggest thing I want to show off, hopefully, is how much VRAM is utilized in this game. So right now at, oh, what are we getting, 100? Oh, this is a lot of FPS. Wait a minute, is it the same when we land on a planet? It might not be, but I'm looking at that GPU memory used figure on our top left. So if you have an 8GB graphics card, like say a RTX 4060, which would have costed the same as the 7600 XT, you'd already be close to maxing out the memory. And this is at what? Let's see, high settings, 1440p. Anyways, this frame rate is actually a little too high right now. I wanna see if it changes once we get into this tower. Okay, there's gonna be some mines right there. Let's see if we trigger any of them. But we're getting over 100, what? Oh, I know why. Because we've got frame generation on. Duh. Let's turn it off. Let's see what happens when we turn off frame generation. Now we're getting about 48, 40. Oh my, I mean, that's still kind of impressive nonetheless, but that's how much frame generation matters in a PC like this. It can make a whole world of difference. So let's go ahead and turn that on. Screw it. We got frame gen on. Let's go to ultra. All right, and let's see, what would it be like without frame generation? With ultra settings, 1440p, getting about 50 FPS, that's not too shabby. But look at that memory. We're using up close to 12 gigabytes of memory. Wow. Let's go ahead and turn on frame generation though. What are we getting now? Almost 100. And look at that, oh, there they are. Yep, I was wondering. But look at that memory, 12 gigabytes used. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you want a graphics card with a lot of VRAM, like the 7600 XT. No, but really guys, look at how much VRAM we're using. If we had even that aforementioned 6750 XT or an RTX 4070, those cards have 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and here we have a full 16. Look, it's gone up to 13 gigabytes of VRAM. That's crazy. Man, guys, that is so much VRAM being used. Oh my goodness. This is one of the instances where a 7600 XT with 16 does make a fair bit of sense. Oh, here's a baddie. Easy. 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 Y'all, this $700 PC, it is put in work for this AAA game. That was pretty quick. Yeah, I'm not complaining. All right, let's move on to the next game. All right, here we are in Fortnite, AKA Fortnite, and we're playing at 1440p. Don't get it twisted, but the graphics look a little bit different. Why is that? Well, sir, that is because I'm playing on the performance API. I figured if I'm building a PC below $1,000 and I'm gonna play Fortnite, all you guys care about is frame rate. And to do so, it's pretty simple. We gotta enable performance mode. So let's see, I'm gonna get to a safe spot, show you guys the graphic settings. Hopefully I don't die. We're on 0 build mode. That's the only game mode I can play on this. Settings, 360 FPS limit, 1440p, performance mode API, and we got everything set to epic. Are you not entertained? Yo, this is pretty rad. I like this. Let me get a dude though, before we quit. Oh yeah, come on, there's gotta be a guy right here. You can't build now, but you can drive away like a wuss. This is stupid. Yo, I think I gotta end the gameplay. This is stupid. This is, even when there's no build mode, people find ways to just get out scot-free. Oh my God. All right, let's close out the video. Okay, what do I think about this $700 gaming PC build? It's definitely faster than my last one. My last $700 PC build guide I released like way back in March or April of this year went a bit of a different direction. There I prioritized the CPU a bit more over the GPU, and while that 7500F is nice, the motherboards for that price segment are more expensive for Ryzen 7000, and DDR5 RAM is still fairly expensive. But for a more budget PC like this, going with the Ryzen 5 5600, I don't think it's gonna be that much of a knock versus the faster 7500F, because in exchange, we can get a cheaper motherboard with cheaper memory at DDR4, and then in turn, be able to afford a much more expensive graphics card, which absolutely showed in the benchmark section, especially in AAA games like Starfield, where you can completely max out the graphics settings with frame generation turned on, and see that you're eating over 12 gigabytes of memory on the graphics card. So to that end, for those of you who are wondering, should I get the 6750 XT or 7600 XT, because both will cost about the same, if you are someone who's gonna be playing more esports oriented titles, more first person shooters, if all you care about is pure frame rate, get the 6750 XT. But if you wanted to dabble at all into any AAA games at really high graphical settings with frame generation turned on, like Starfield or any other AAA game that's gonna be graphically taxing, there I think the 7600 XT with its 16 gigabytes of memory can make a world of a difference. In either scenario though, I would not recommend the 4060. As you saw, you're gonna be pushing that 8 gigabyte VRAM buffer on the 4060 above its limits, and in 2024, I just can't firmly recommend it. Also, because I know some of you guys are gonna ask about it, yes, I changed the CPU cooler because I had a spare AMD Wraith Stealth cooler lying around, so that's what I wanted to use. Wraith Spire, I think that's what it's called. And I also had some spare black extension cables for the power supply cables, so I wanted to use those as well. And I think as far as this case goes, it's not bad. It's definitely cheap, but it's not bad. The 2 included front fans will be enough. A third one in the back would be nice, but you can use just about anything. And as we saw when we opened up the back side of the PC case, you can fit a third fan into that fan and RGB controller. Even if it has RGB, it'll be compatible as long as it's a 5-volt ARGB header. So overall, yeah, I think this is a pretty solid $700 gaming PC. So if you'd like to build this, again, check out the PCBuilds.gg link at the top of the description. There, it'll include all the parts you'll need to build this PC. And once again, I wanna thank all of you guys who watch these PC build videos. Your support means a lot. And before I close out the video, I do want to disclose that YouTube may compensate me for using the shopping tags you've seen throughout this video. So with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, and this is the ScatterVolt channel, signing out.